The first thing Commander Kira noticed wasn't the blue marble spinning below them, it was the silence. After 18 cycles of deep space reconnaissance, her ears had grown accustomed to the constant hum of dying civilizations, the electromagnetic screams of planets burning under their own wars, the hollow echoes of worlds that had already gone quiet forever. But Earth sang. It sang in radio waves that danced between frequencies like children at play. It sang in the chaotic symphony of 1,000,000 different voices speaking 1,000 different languages. It sang in the pulse of cities that glowed like neurons firing in some vast dreaming mind. The observation deck had been stationed in Earth's outer orbit for 3 standard months now, and Kira still found herself pressing her palm against the viewport, feeling the vibration of all that life resonating through the ship's hull. Another probe launched from the western continent, reported Lieutenant Ben, his voice carrying that familiar tone of scientific fascination mixed with growing unease. That makes 47 this cycle. They're not just reaching for their moon anymore, Commander. Some of these trajectories, they're aimed at us. Kira turned from the viewport, her silver eyes reflecting the blue-white glow of the planet below. The humans couldn't see them, of course. The observation deck remained cloaked, invisible to their primitive sensors. Standard protocol for studying pre-contact civilizations. Watch, record, document their inevitable self-destruction. File the report. Move on to the next dying world. But Earth refused to die. Show me, she commanded, moving to the holographic display that materialized in the center of the bridge. The data streams painted a picture that defied everything the Galactic Council had taught them about young civilizations. Wars, yes, but also peace treaties. Pollution, certainly, but also massive coordinated efforts to heal their world. Hatred and division, but also an inexplicable tendency to risk everything for strangers, for principles, for dreams that seemed impossible. Look at this, Ben whispered, highlighting a section of intercepted communications. A natural disaster struck their eastern archipelago. Within hours, rescue teams from 50 different nations responded. They don't even have a unified government, but they moved as one organism. Kira studied the data, her heart's beating in an irregular rhythm that her species associated with deep confusion. In all her years of observation, she had never seen anything like humanity. They were simultaneously the most self-destructive and most self-preserving species she had ever encountered. They waged wars while simultaneously developing medicine to save their enemies. They poisoned their oceans while desperately working to clean them. They built weapons capable of destroying their world twice over, then turned those same technologies toward reaching the stars. Commander, another voice called from the communication station. We're receiving a transmission. It's directed at us. The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. Kira felt her breathing slow as she processed the implications. That's impossible. They can't see us. The transmission is coming from their space agency. It's a simple mathematical sequence, but it's being broadcast on a frequency that ... The communications officer paused, her face pale. It's the exact frequency we use for our cloaking field modulation. Every great bond starts with a single moment of courage. HFY Chronicle Stories is just beginning, and your support matters. If you love emotional sci-fi tales, forbidden connections, and stories that stay with you, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring more stories from the stars to you. Kira moved slowly toward the communications console, each step feeling like a betrayal of everything she had been taught. The message played again, prime numbers, then Fibonacci sequences, then something more complex. Something that spoke of intelligence not just awakening, but reaching out with deliberate intent. They know we're here, she whispered. Orders, Commander? Ben asked, his hand hovering over the emergency protocols that would take them away from Earth in less than a minute. Kira looked back at the viewport, at the blue world that had spent 3 months teaching her that everything she thought she knew about young civilizations was wrong. The humans had looked up at the stars and somehow, impossibly, looked back at those who were watching them. For the first time in her career, Commander Kira hesitated to follow protocol. The transmission continued for 72 hours straight, growing more sophisticated with each iteration. What had begun as simple mathematical sequences evolved into complex proofs, then into something that made Lieutenant Ben pace the bridge like a caged predator. "Commander, they're not just acknowledging our presence," he said, his voice tight. "With excitement and fear, they're trying to communicate. Look at this latest sequence. It's a star map. Our star map. They've identified our point of origin." Kira studied the holographic display, watching as the human transmission painted a picture of local space that was remarkably accurate for a species that had barely left their home planet. They had identified not just her home system, but the systems of 3 other Council species. The implications sent cold currents through her blood. "How is this possible?" she asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "They've been watching us watch them," replied Dr. May from the science station, "for who knows how long. While we've been cataloging their behavior, they've been reverse engineering our presence from gravitational anomalies, electromagnetic signatures, and—" She paused, her expression troubled. "Commander, they've been tracking our waste heat. Our cloaking technology is perfect against their instruments, but it doesn't hide the fact that we're displacing energy." The revelation hit Kira like a physical blow. Humanity hadn't just accidentally detected them, they had been systematically hunting for signs of extraterrestrial observation. They had assumed they were being watched and had spent decades developing the technology to prove it. "There's more," May continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The transmission includes biological data, our biological data, atmospheric samples from our homeworld. They know what we breathe, what we eat, what our basic physiology requires. They're not just saying hello, Commander. They're saying, we know who you are, where you're from, and what you need to survive." The bridge fell into stunned silence. In all the archives of the Galactic Council, no pre-contact civilization had ever demonstrated such sophisticated detection capabilities. Most species barely managed to achieve stable flight before destroying themselves. Earth's humans had not only achieved flight, but had apparently been conducting counter-surveillance operations against advanced alien civilizations. "Orders, Commander?" Ben asked again, but this time his voice carried a different weight. This wasn't about protocol anymore. This was about contact with the species that had already made contact with them. Before Kira could respond, the communications console erupted with new signals. Multiple frequencies, multiple transmission points across the planet. The humans weren't just sending one message, they were coordinating a global response. "My God," May breathed, her translator struggling with the human idiom. "They're not just talking to us. They're talking to each other about us. The entire planet is mobilizing." Kira watched the data streams cascade across her screens, each one representing millions of human beings, suddenly aware that they were not alone in the universe. She expected panic, chaos, the kind of societal collapse that first contact typically triggered in young civilizations. Instead, she saw something that defied her understanding of how intelligent species were supposed to behave. The humans were organizing. "Commander," the communications officer called out, her voice strained. "We're receiving a new transmission. It's in our language." The bridge fell absolutely silent. Kira felt her world tilt on its axis as the impossible became reality. Our language? Perfect grammar. Perfect syntax. They're requesting formal diplomatic contact under what they call established interstellar protocols. "Commander, they're citing legal frameworks that we use for council interactions. Laws they should have no knowledge of." Kira stared at the blue world below, her mind reeling. How long had humanity been preparing for this moment? How long had they known that civilizations like hers existed? The implications stretched far beyond her mission, beyond her understanding, beyond everything the Council thought they knew about how first contact was supposed to work. "They're asking for a face-to-face meeting," the communications officer continued. "They've provided coordinates for a location they call neutral space, the gravitational balance point between Earth and their moon. They say they'll meet us. They're in 48 hours with a diplomatic delegation. And if we refuse?" Kira asked out. The officer's face went pale. "They've politely indicated that they'll begin broadcasting our location to the rest of the galaxy. They've somehow mapped our communication networks, Commander. They know how to contact the Council directly." For the first time in her career, Commander Kira realized she was no longer the observer. She had become the observed. The shuttle bay felt impossibly small as Kira prepared for what would either be first contact or her final mission. The diplomatic protocols she had studied for decades suddenly seemed inadequate, written as they were for civilizations that stumbled blindly into the galactic community, not for species that had been systematically preparing for contact while pretending to be primitive. "The humans have arrived at the rendezvous point," reported Lieutenant Ben from the pilot's seat. "Commander, their ship. It's not what we expected." Through the viewport, Kira could see the human vessel hanging in the void like a crystalline flower blooming against the star field. It was beautiful in a way that made her chest tight organic curves married to geometric precision, clearly built for long-distance travel rather than the short-range shuttles that most pre-contact species managed. "They've been to the stars before," she whispered, the realization hitting her like cold water. "This isn't their first time off-world." "The energy signatures are fascinating," Dr. May added from her position at the science console. "Their propulsion system is completely different from ours, but it's just as efficient. They've developed spaceflight along an entirely different technological path." As their shuttle approached the human vessel, Kira found herself studying the alien ship with the same intensity she had once reserved for Earth itself. There were no weapons visible, but she had learned not to underestimate human ingenuity. A species that could detect cloaked observation ships while pretending to be primitive was capable of hiding anything. "Incoming transmission," announced the communications officer. "They're requesting permission to dock." "Dock?" Ben's voice cracked slightly. "With us?" The human ship was easily 3 times the size of their scout vessel, but as Kira watched, it began to transform. Sections of its hull folded back like flower petals, revealing a docking bay that perfectly matched their shuttle's dimensions. The humans had studied their ship designs too. "Permission granted," Kira said, her voice steadier than she felt. Docking process was seamless, guided by technology that interfaced flawlessly with their own systems. As the airlock sealed and atmospheres equalized, Kira found herself facing a moment that would change everything, not just for her, but for the entire Galactic Council. The airlock opened, and humanity walked through. The first thing that struck her was how perfectly ordinary they looked. After months of observation, she had expected something more dramatic, more alien. Instead, 3 beings walked through the airlock who could have been cousins to her own species, bipedal. Bilateral symmetry, sensory organs clustered around a central processing unit. The only immediately obvious difference was their size. They were significantly smaller than her people, but they moved with a confidence that made them seem larger than they were. "Commander Kira," the lead human said, their translator converting the sounds into her language. "I am Ambassador Lin. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." The formal greeting was perfect, following diplomatic protocols that had taken the Council centuries to develop. But it was the human's eyes that captured Kira's attention, dark, intelligent, and carrying a weight of knowledge that suggested they knew far more about her than she had ever known about them. "Ambassador Lin," she replied, extending the traditional greeting gesture. "I must admit, your people have surprised us." Lin smiled. an expression that translated across species barriers. We've been preparing for this conversation for a very long time, Commander. Earth has many secrets, but perhaps the greatest is how long we've known we weren't alone. The second human stepped forward, introducing themselves as Dr. Cole, while the third remained slightly back, a security precaution that Kira recognized and respected. These weren't naive primitives stumbling into galactic politics. They were experienced negotiators. How long? Kira asked, unable to keep the question contained. Our first confirmed detection of extraterrestrial observation was 87 years ago, Dr. Cole replied casually. We've been tracking various species, surveillance operations ever since. Your people have been the most thorough, which is why we chose to make contact with you first. 87 years. The number hit Kira like a physical blow. These humans had been aware of galactic civilization for nearly a century while the Council believed they were uncontacted primitives. The implications were staggering. You chose us? She managed. Ambassador Lin nodded. The Galactic Council has been conducting observation missions throughout this sector for over 2 centuries. We've identified 14 different species, cataloged their technologies, and studied their cultural patterns. Your people showed the most compatible approach to first contact protocols. The words hung in the air like a challenge. The humans hadn't just been passive subjects of observation. They had been conducting their own intelligence-gathering operation on the entire galactic community. The conference room aboard the human ship defied every assumption Kira had made about pre-contact technology. The walls displayed star charts that showed not just local systems, but trade routes, political boundaries, and military installations throughout Council space. The humans had been building a comprehensive intelligence picture of galactic civilization for decades. This is impossible, Dr. May whispered, staring at a display that showed the internal structure of a Council governance station. These are classified installations. Security clearance Omega-7. How could you possibly know about them? Ambassador Lin activated another display, showing a timeline that made Kira's stomach drop. We've been intercepting your communications for 60 years. Your encryption is sophisticated, but you made one critical error in your assumptions about primitive civilizations. What error? Kira asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer. You assumed that a species capable of space travel couldn't exist without formal galactic recognition, Dr. Cole explained. The Council protocols are built around the idea that civilizations develop in isolation until they're contacted. But Earth was never isolated. We've been listening to your radio chatter since we first achieved long-range communication. The revelation was staggering. The humans had been eavesdropping on galactic civilization for generations, learning languages, studying cultures, and building technology specifically designed to interact with species they had never officially met. We know about the hegemony threat, Lin continued, referencing a classified military situation that was currently consuming Council resources. We know about the resource wars in the Outer Rim. We know about the political instability in the core worlds. And we know that the Council is facing challenges that threaten the stability of this entire galactic region. Kira felt her world shifting beneath her feet. You're not making first contact. You're making a diplomatic overture. Exactly. Lin smiled that peculiar human expression again. Earth would like to offer assistance. Assistance? Ben's voice cracked with disbelief. You're barely a Type 1 civilization by our measurements. What could you possibly offer the Council? Dr. Cole activated a new display, showing technological schematics that made the assembled officers lean forward in amazement. We've had 87 years to study your technology from the outside. Sometimes an external perspective reveals solutions that internal development misses. The schematic showed improvements to Council technology that were elegantly simple and devastatingly effective. Power systems that were 30% more efficient. communication networks that were virtually unhackable, weapon systems that Kira recognized as being capable of ending the hegemony threat. We've also been tracking the hegemony ships that have been probing this system, Lin added casually. They've been using the outer planets to mask their approach. But our deep space monitoring network has been cataloging their movements for months. We know where they're massing for their next assault on Council space. The silence in the room was deafening. The humans weren't just offering to join galactic civilization, they were offering to save it. What do you want in return? Kira asked, falling back on diplomatic training that suddenly seemed inadequate. Partnership, Lin replied simply. Earth has been alone for too long. We've been preparing for this moment for generations, but we're tired of watching from the shadows. We want to be part of something larger. And if the Council refuses? The question hung in the air like a weapon. Lin's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the room's atmosphere. Then Earth will continue to develop independently. Dr. Cole said quietly, We've been mapping the galaxy, identifying resource-rich systems, establishing contact protocols with non-Council civilizations. We don't need the Council's permission to expand beyond our solar system. The implication was clear. Humanity could become either the Council's greatest ally or its most formidable rival. They had the technology, the knowledge, and the strategic advantage of having studied galactic civilization for decades without being studied in return. There's something else you should know, Lin continued. Earth isn't the only world in this system capable of supporting complex life. We've been gardening. A new display activated, showing the solar system in detail. Mars glowed with the soft blue-green of terraforming efforts. The moons of Jupiter showed signs of atmospheric development. Even the harsh environment of Venus was being slowly transformed. We've been preparing for expansion for 50 years, Dr. Cole explained. Not just to other stars, but throughout this system. By the time you discovered us, we were already becoming a multi-world civilization. Kira stared at the displays, her mind reeling. Humanity hadn't just achieved spaceflight. They had achieved system-wide colonization while maintaining the illusion of being a single-world species. How many of you are there? She whispered. On Earth? About 12 billion. In the system? Lin smiled. That's classified. The return journey to the observation deck passed in stunned silence. Kira stared out at Earth, no longer a blue marble, but the capital of a multi-world civilization that had been preparing for galactic contact for nearly a century. The humans had let them go with a simple message. The Council has 72 hours to decide. Commander, Ben said quietly, what do we tell them? The question that had been haunting Kira since the moment she had first heard humanity's transmission. The Council's protocols were clear. Pre-contact civilizations were to be monitored until they either achieved stable interstellar travel or destroyed themselves. There were no protocols for civilizations that had been conducting counter-surveillance operations while secretly achieving multi-system colonization. The truth, she said finally. All of it. The communication with Council Central took 18 hours to establish, not because of technical difficulties, but because her report was so unprecedented that it required confirmation from multiple departments. When High Administrator Vell finally appeared on the main screen, his expression was that of someone who had just watched his understanding of the universe collapse. Commander Kira, he said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of diplomatic experience, your report suggests that we have fundamentally misunderstood the nature of this species. More than that, sir. We've misunderstood our own security protocols. If the humans could conduct detailed surveillance of our operations for decades without our knowledge, what does that say about our defenses against less friendly civilizations? The question hit its mark. The Council had been operating under the assumption that their technology was centuries ahead of any undiscovered species. The humans had just proven that assumption catastrophically wrong. The technology they've offered. Vel continued, our engineers have reviewed the preliminary data. It's not just advanced, it's revolutionary. The efficiency improvements alone could transform our energy infrastructure. And the military applications? Kira asked, though she already knew the answer. Could end the hegemony war within a year. Vel's expression was grave. The question is whether we can trust a species that has been deceiving us for so long. Sir, with respect, they weren't deceiving us. They were protecting themselves. Everything they did was reactive to our presence. They detected our surveillance and responded accordingly. If anything, they've shown remarkable restraint. The silence stretched across the light years between them. Finally, Vel spoke again. The Council is prepared to offer Earth provisional membership, with full diplomatic recognition pending successful integration protocols. Kira felt her heart skip. And if they refuse provisional status, then we hope they remain as benevolent as they appear to be. The transmission ended, leaving Kira alone with the weight of first contact. She looked out at Earth one final time, watching the Terminator line creep across continents where billions of humans were going about their daily lives, unaware that their species had just negotiated entry into galactic civilization. Her communication console chimed with an incoming message from the human diplomatic vessel. Ambassador Lin's face appeared on the screen, and Kira could read the answer in their expression before they spoke. Commander Kira, Earth accepts the Council's offer. We look forward to working together. Welcome to the galactic community, Ambassador. Thank you. Though I should mention we've been in communication with several other species in this sector. It seems we're not the only ones who've been preparing for formal contact. The words sent a chill through Kira's blood. Other species? The galaxy is much more crowded than the Council realizes. There are civilizations that have been watching the Watchers for longer than humanity has existed. Some of them are very interested in meeting the Council formally. As if summoned by Lin's words, Kira's tactical display lit up with new contacts. Ships were decloaking throughout the system, not human vessels, but craft of designs she had never seen before. The scanner counted 12, then 20, then stopped counting as more signatures appeared. Ambassador, she said carefully, who are your friends? Lin's smile was both reassuring and terrifying. Commander, you're about to discover that first contact is much more complicated than anyone imagined. The galaxy has been waiting for someone to open the door. Earth just happened to be the one brave enough to knock. Outside the viewport, the ships continued to appear, representatives of civilizations that had been hiding in the shadows of space, waiting for the moment when contact became inevitable. Humanity hadn't just achieved first contact with the Council. They had triggered the revelation of an entire hidden galaxy. As Kira watched the greatest diplomatic event in galactic history unfold around her, she realized that her original mission had been based on a fundamental misunderstanding. She hadn't been sent to watch Earth until it was ready for contact. She had been sent to watch Earth until the galaxy was ready for humanity.